Architected original memoir narrative with fresh character names and emotional family drama. Architected original memoir narrative with fresh character names and emotional family drama arc. The envelope had been sitting in my purse for 3 days before I worked up the nerve to open it at my own kitchen table. And when I finally did, the first thing I felt wasn't anger. It was something quieter and worse. The feeling you get when you realize the floor you've been standing on was never actually a floor. It was a check from my sister for $4,000 with a post-it note stuck to the front in her looping handwriting that said, "This makes us square. Love you." $4,000 to make us square when she owed me $31,000 and had owed it to me for almost 4 years. I want to back up, because if you just heard that number, you'd assume I was some idiot who handed over my life savings to a stranger. I wasn't. I was a 30-year-old woman who loved her family more than she respected herself. And there is a difference, even though it took me a long, ugly stretch of my life to learn it. My sister is 2 years younger than me. Her name is Bridget, and growing up, she was the bright one, the loud one, the one who walked into a room and rearranged the air in it. I was the steady one, the one who remembered Mom's doctor appointments and renewed the car registration and showed up early. In our family, being reliable was treated less like a virtue and more like a personality flaw, the way some people get teased for being too nice. I learned early that the people who hold everything together are the people who hold everything together are the people everyone forgets to thank. So here's the setup, and I'll try to be fair about it because for a long time I told this story like I was the perfect victim, and that's not honest. 4 years ago, Bridget and her husband Marcus found their dream house. It was a craftsman bungalow in a neighborhood that was just starting to turn around, the kind of place that's a little rough now, but everybody swears will be worth double in 10 years. They'd been renting a cramped 2-bedroom and they had a baby on the way. My niece and Bridget called me one night crying because they were going to lose the house. They had the income to carry the mortgage, but they were short on the down payment. The seller wouldn't wait. They needed $31,000 in 11 days or the deal was dead. I had it, barely, but I had it. My husband Owen and I had spent 6 years building up our savings, the boring way, brown bag lunches and skipped vacations in a used Honda we kept running on duct tape and prayer. That money was earmarked for our own house someday, and I want to be honest about the moment, because the moment mattered. Owen and I sat at the same kitchen table, and he didn't say no. He's not the type to say no to family. But he asked one question. He said, "Are they going to pay us back or are we giving them a gift?" And I said with total confidence, "She's my sister. Of course she'll pay us back." That sentence, "She's my sister," I have replayed it so many times that it stopped sounding like words and started sounding like a noise an animal makes. We did it right, is the thing. That's what makes the rest of it so maddening. I'm not the woman who just Venmoed her sister 30 grand on a feeling. Owen insisted, and I agreed, that we draw up a simple loan agreement. Nothing fancy, nothing with a lawyer, just a 1-page document that said we were lending $31,000 to be repaid over 5 years, no interest, because what kind of monster charges their own sister interest? Bridget signed it. Marcus signed it. I signed it. I made 3 copies. I am, as established, the reliable one. We wired the money the next morning, and 11 days later my sister stood on the porch of her beautiful craftsman bungalow and cried and hugged me and said she would never forget what I did for her. She forgot almost immediately. The first year the payments came. Not always on time, but they came. Little chunks here and there, a few $100s when she could. By the end of year 1 she paid back maybe $6,000. I wasn't worried. Life happens. She had a newborn. The second year, the payments slowed to a trickle and then stopped. And every time I gently brought it up, and I do mean gently, because I was terrified of seeming like the bad guy, she had a reason. Marcus's hours got cut. The baby needed surgery on her ears, those little tubes, and that was real and I didn't push. The water heater died. The reasons were always real enough that pushing felt cruel, so I didn't push. The third year, I stopped getting reasons and started getting silence. I'd text, "Hey, no rush at all. just wondering if we could set up a little payment plan again. And I'd get a thumbs up emoji. A thumbs up emoji on a text about $30,000. And here's the part that I'm still not proud of. The part that I think a lot of people will recognize even if they won't admit it. I let it go because the alternative, the only real alternative, was confrontation. And I had built my entire identity, my entire role in this family, on never being the one who caused a scene. I had been trained since childhood to absorb, to smooth, to eat the cost so nobody else had to. So I ate it. Meanwhile, I watched. That's the thing about absorbing everything quietly. It leaves you nothing to do but watch. I watched Bridget post pictures of their kitchen renovation. New quartz countertops, the kind that run 12 grand easy. I watched them go to Cancún for their anniversary. I watched Marcus pull into our parents' driveway one Thanksgiving in a leased Audi SUV, and I sat in my paid-off duct-taped Honda and felt something cold and clarifying move through me. But I still said nothing. I told myself maybe they'd refinanced. Maybe there was money I didn't know about. I made excuses for her better than she made them for herself. And Owen, God bless that man, never once said I told you so. But I'd catch him looking at the Honda, and then looking at me. And I knew he was doing the same math I was. We had wanted to start trying for a baby of our own. We put it off, partly the money, partly that I quietly drained our cushion to keep my sister's dream alive. Our own dream just sort of sat there, in the corner, getting dusty. While my sister's dream got quartz countertops, I think I could have gone on like that forever. That's the embarrassing truth. I think I would have let the whole $31,000 dissolve into the past like sugar in coffee, and I would have told myself it was the price of being a good sister, and I would have quietly resented her for the rest of my life while smiling at every family barbecue. That was the road I was on. And then came my mother's birthday dinner. My mom turned 65 that spring, and we did it up at a nice restaurant downtown, the kind with white tablecloths and a wine list that needs its own table of contents. The whole family. My parents, me and Owen, Bridget and Marcus and my niece, a couple of aunts, my cousin. It was a good night mostly. I remember laughing. I remember my mom looking genuinely happy, which is rarer than it should be. And then, somewhere between the entrees and the desserts, my cousin, who is the kind of person who says things without thinking, leaned across the table and said to Marcus, "So how's the new boat treating you?" A boat. I set down my fork. I watched Marcus's face do a thing, a little flicker, a micro-expression of a man realizing the wrong card had been played. And Bridget jumped in fast, too fast, with a laugh and a wave of her hand and, "Oh, it's just a little used thing. Marcus has always wanted one." And my cousin, oblivious, kept going. "Little? That thing's got to be 20 feet. Marcus showed me pictures. It's gorgeous. What'd that run you? Like 30 grand. 30 grand. I am not exaggerating when I say the entire restaurant seemed to go silent, even though I'm sure it didn't. I'm sure the other tables kept right on eating. But in my head, it went silent. 30 grand. The same number, the exact almost to the dollar same number that my sister had been telling me for 2 years she did not have, could not find. Was so sorry about. While the baby needed ear tubes and Marcus's hours got cut and the water heater died. A boat. I looked at my sister and my sister looked at me, and for one single second, the mask came all the way off and I saw her see me see her. And do you know what she did? She rolled her eyes. Just slightly. Just enough. Like I was being dramatic. Like I was the problem. Like the audacity was mine, for sitting there with the math written all over my face at our mother's 65th birthday. I didn't say anything at the table. Of course I didn't. I was still me. I smiled, I sang happy birthday, I told my mom the cake was wonderful. But something had broken loose inside me, some load-bearing wall of denial I'd spent 4 years reinforcing, and I could feel the whole structure groaning. In the parking lot afterward, Owen took my hand, and he didn't say anything for a long time. And then he said very quietly, "A boat." And I started crying right there next to the Honda. ugly crying, the kind where you can't catch your breath. And it wasn't even about the money anymore. It was about every Thanksgiving, every thumbs up emoji, every time in our entire lives that I had been the one to absorb and she had been the one to spend, and the family had decided that was just the natural order of things. The money was just the proof. The boat was just the receipt. That night I couldn't sleep, and around 2 a.m. I got out of bed and went down to the filing cabinet in our little home office and pulled out the folder. The Reliable Ones folder. And there it was, where it had been the whole time. The loan agreement. 1 page, 3 signatures, hers, his, mine. With the repayment terms in plain English and the original amount and a payment schedule we both initialed. I sat on the office floor at 2 a.m. holding that piece of paper, and for the first time in 4 years, I let myself feel the thing I'd been refusing to feel. Not sadness. Anger. Clean, dry, useful anger. The kind that doesn't cry. The kind that makes lists. Here's what I did, and I did it slowly because I had finally learned that the people who hold everything together also have the power to let go of one corner and watch what happens. I am methodical. It is, as we've established, my entire personality, and for the first time in my life I pointed that methodical nature at someone who had been counting on me being too nice to use it. First I gathered everything, every text. I scrolled back 4 years and I screenshotted every message where it asked about the money and every reason she'd given and every thumbs up emoji. I printed our text history. I printed the wire transfer confirmation from the bank, the one with the $31,000 and the date and her account on the receiving end. I printed the $6,000 in scattered payments she'd made, which, far from helping her, only proved she understood it was a debt, because you don't make payments on a gift. I built a file. A clean, dated, undeniable file. The kind of file a reliable person builds in her sleep. Then I went to see a lawyer. Just a consultation, the free hour. I walked in expecting to be told it was hopeless, that family money is always a mess, that I should just let it go. Instead, the lawyer flipped through my 1-page agreement and my 4 years of documentation and looked up at me almost amused and said, "Mum, this is one of the cleanest open and promissory note situations I've seen in a while. You have a signed agreement, you have the wire transfer, you have a payment history that acknowledges the debt, and you have her in writing saying she'll pay. The statute of limitations hasn't run. You could file in small claims for part of this or go to civil court for the whole thing, and frankly, you'd win." I will never forget walking out of that office into the afternoon sun. I felt taller. I had spent 4 years feeling like a fool, and a stranger in a suit had just handed me back my own competence. But I want to be clear about something, because this is the part that matters, and it's the part I'm proudest of. And it's the part that I think people get wrong when they imagine getting even. I did not want to destroy my sister. I didn't want to drag her into a courtroom and have a judge yell at her. I didn't want my niece to grow up hearing that aunt sued mommy. I am not built for scorched earth. What I wanted, what I had wanted all along, underneath the anger, was just for it to be true. For the thing that had happened to be acknowledged as the thing that had happened. For one person in this family to look at me and say, "You were right, and we were wrong, and we are sorry." So I gave her one chance to do it the easy way. I wrote her a letter, not a text. A letter on paper, because some things deserve weight, and I was not cruel in it. I laid it all out plainly. I told her I knew about the boat. I told her I had the agreement and the records, and that I had spoken to a lawyer who said I had a clear case, and then I told her the truth underneath all of it, that this had never really been about money, that I had spent my whole life being the one who held things together while she got to be the one who shone, and that I had been okay with that. I had told myself I was okay with that, right up until the moment I realized she didn't just take me for granted. She had looked me in the eye and lied to me, repeatedly, while spending the money I gave her on a boat. I told her I wanted the remaining $25,000, the actual balance after her early payments, on a real schedule this time, in writing, starting now, and I told her that if she did that, This stayed between us, and we could try to find our way back to being sisters. And if she didn't, I would file and let a judge sort it out, and the family could draw their own conclusions. I mailed it on a Tuesday, the certified kind where you get a little green card back proving she signed for it. The reliable one covers her bases. She called me Thursday night. I had braced myself for a fight. I had scripts ready in my head for every version of her. The defensive version, the crying version, the how could you do this to family version, the version where she made herself the victim of my cruelty. I had been preparing for those versions for 4 years, honestly. I had accounted for all of them. I had not prepared for silence. For about 10 seconds after I said hello, she didn't say anything at all. And I could hear her breathing. And then she said, in a voice I hadn't heard from her since we were kids. Since before she became the bright, loud one who rearranged the air. She said, I knew this call was coming. I've known for a long time. I just kept thinking if I waited long enough it would go away. And then my sister, for the first time in our entire adult lives, told me the truth. The truth was uglier and sadder and more human than the story I'd been telling myself. The truth was that they were drowning. The craftsman bungalow that everyone swore would double in value had needed $40,000 in foundation work nobody saw coming. The kitchen renovation I'd watched with such bitterness on Instagram had actually been a partial repair after a burst pipe. Done as cheaply as possible and staged to look like a triumph, because that's what you do on Instagram, you stage the triumph. The Cancún trip had been points and a timeshare pitch. They'd endured for the free room. The Audi was leased and they were upside down on it. And the boat. The boat was Marcus's. Marcus had bought the boat on credit, behind her back, in some flailing male pride spiral after a year of feeling like a failure. And she had found out about it 2 weeks before our mother's birthday, and they had been at war about it ever since, and she had been too ashamed and too proud to tell anyone, least of all me, the responsible older sister who would have been right, who had been right the whole time. You did everything right, she said, and she was crying now, but it wasn't the performed crying, it was the real kind, the kind that's almost silent. You loaned us the money, you wrote it up. You were so reasonable about it for years, and I kept thinking, she's fine, she's got it together. She doesn't need it back as bad as we need to keep it. I told myself that. I let myself believe it, because the truth was too embarrassing. And then at Mom's dinner, when Stephen brought up the boat, I rolled my eyes at you because I was so ashamed that for 1 second I needed you to be the dramatic one. I needed it to be your fault that I felt like garbage. I'm so sorry. I have been such a coward, and you were never anything but good to me. And I paid you back with a thumbs up emoji. I sat down on the kitchen floor. Same kitchen, same table. I'd opened the original checkout somewhere up above me. We talked for 2 hours, the longest real conversation we'd had in maybe 15 years. She told me she'd already decided before the letter even came that they were selling the boat, that she'd given Marcus an ultimatum, and that the boat money was going to come straight to me, 22,000 of it, with the rest on a real plan. And it did. The boat sold 3 weeks later, and she sent me $22,000 in one transfer, and this time the note attached to it didn't say, "This makes us square." This time she called me on the phone while it was sending and stayed on the line until I confirmed it landed, and she said, "I'm going to pay you the last of it by Christmas, and I'm going to do it because it's yours, not because you threatened me. I needed the threat to wake up, but this part's on me." And the $4,000 check, the one I told you about at the very beginning, the one with the post-it that said, "This makes us square," that had come a month before all this, before the letter, before the boat in the middle of their war, when she was still trying to make the whole thing disappear for less than 15 cents on the dollar. I never cashed it. I keep it in the folder with the loan agreement, not out of spite, as a reminder of who I used to be, the woman who would have probably cashed it eventually and called it square, and resented her sister silently for the rest of her life. I keep it to remember the version of me who almost let that happen. Here's the part I most want you to hear, because I think it's the part that actually changed my life, and it isn't the money. The money came back, all of it, eventually. By Christmas, just like she said. Owen and I took that $31,000 and we put it toward the down payment on our own house, a little place with a yard, not a craftsman bungalow, but ours, and I am writing this from a kitchen I actually own. That's a good ending, but it's not the real ending. The real ending is that I stopped being the family shock absorber. When you spend 30 years training everyone around you to believe that you will always eat the cost so nobody else has to, the hardest and most important thing you will ever do is hand the costs back to the person it belongs to. Not with cruelty, not with a courtroom, if you can avoid it, but firmly, in writing, with the receipts, refusing to be talked out of your own reality. I learned that being reliable is a beautiful thing, but being reliable to everyone except yourself is not a virtue. It's just self-erasure with good manners. My sister and I are okay now. Better than okay, actually. There's a strange honesty between us that was never there before, because you can't go back to pretending. After you've sat on the phone for 2 hours telling each other the real version, she still shines, I'm still steady. But she knows now what steady costs, and she doesn't treat it like furniture anymore. And every so often, when one of us starts sliding back into the old roles, when I feel myself about to absorb something that isn't mine to carry, one of us will say it, half joking and half not. Don't make me get out the folder. And we both laugh. But we both also know I have the folder. And somehow knowing I'm the kind of woman who has the folder, who will use the folder, is a thing that means I almost never have to. I think about that uncashed check sometimes. $4,000 to make us square, the cheapest thing in the world, a discount on the truth. I'm so glad I never cashed it. Some things you don't make square. Some things you don't make square. For 4 years, I told myself that loving someone meant never asking them for anything back, and that quiet sentence almost cost me my whole sense of self. I look at that uncashed $4,000 check now, the one with the post-it that said we were square, and I see exactly who I used to be. A woman who would have swallowed $31,000 and called it the price of being a good sister, then carried the resentment to her grave with a polite smile on her face. What I understand now is that nothing in this story happened by accident. Every payment I let slide taught Bridget that my no wasn't real. Every thumbs up emoji I accepted instead of an honest answer trained her to believe I would always absorb the hit. I built that pattern with my own hands, one swallowed grievance at a time, and then I blamed her for living inside the rules I'd written. The boat didn't appear out of nowhere. It grew in the space I left empty by refusing to speak. The thing that finally turned it around wasn't rage, and it wasn't a courtroom. It was the boring discipline of being honest about what was true. I gathered the texts. I printed the wire transfer. I kept the signed agreement in a folder. Not because I'm vindictive, but because I'm the kind of person who keeps her records. And that one ordinary habit gave me power when I finally decided to use it. There's a clear-eyed kind of intelligence in refusing to argue with someone's excuses, and instead simply laying the facts on the table. I stopped trying to win the feeling and started standing on the truth. And it took more grit than I knew I had. Mailing that letter, certified, with the little green card coming back proving she'd signed for it, was the hardest thing I'd done in years, because it meant accepting that being the nice one had become a cage. Pushing through that fear, the fear of being the one who finally caused the scene, was the moment I grew up. But none of it would have mattered if I'd let the anger make me cruel. I gave Bridget a way back. I wanted the money, yes, but more than that, I wanted the truth spoken out loud. And I left a door open for us to still be sisters on the other side of it. That choice, to be firm without becoming heartless, is the whole reason we're close today instead of estranged. So if there's one thing I'd hand to you, it's this. Be the person who keeps her word and keeps her records. Be honest enough to stop arguing with excuses and look straight at the facts. Be brave enough to hand the cost back to the person it belongs to, even when your hands are shaking. Being reliable is a gift. But being reliable to everyone except yourself isn't kindness. It's just self-erasure with good manners, and I'm done living that way.